Good evening, Somers, and welcome to the Somerstown Board regular meeting of Thursday, February 14th. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I would like to call up Troop 228, Peter, Matthew, Cullum, and David to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
All right.
Come on up, gentlemen. Move the cats.
Oh, they don't have to be. Start us up.
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Have a seat.
Thank you, Scott.
As I always say, these young men are in my son's troop, 228, and as we often see them here, they're coming to complete one of the requirements for the communications merit badge, which is an important merit badge because it is an Eagle required merit badge. There are, how many Eagle required badges are there? I can't remember. 21. So this is an important one. I know we have at least one Life Scout here, which is the next step before Eagle Scout. And in order to get Eagle Scout, you have to complete a pretty rigorous project, but you have to have all 21 of those merit badges. So good luck, guys.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's time sensitive too. You have to do it before you're 18.
18. By the looks of them, I think they have a few years.
Yeah. You sound like you're ahead of the game. Fantastic.
I think we have about 50 Eagle Scouts in the town.
We have more than that.
Way
Among the
more.
two troops, we probably have close to 100, I would think,
Yeah.
between the two, at least, if not more.
This came up the other day, and between the two troops, if you add them up, I think it's a few over 100,
Yeah.
Wow.
just in Somers.
Pretty good. They have good leaders, and it's a flourishing program in the town of Somers. My son Tommy's a Life Scout who will be starting his Eagle Scout project pretty soon. But again, he's at the age where now there's a million other things happening, so it's tough to get it nailed down. So
Yeah, that's what happens. I was telling one of the scouts.
He's in charge of opening the Chicos, isn't he?
that's what he's working on.
So I was telling one of the scouts that I achieved Life Scout,
Ooh.
but life got in the way, and Tommy's being pulled in different directions. You guys are going to be pulled in different directions, but you gotta stay focused and make the town of Somers proud.
Keep
Yeah.
your eye
Get
on
all the
prize.
badges early.
Wish I'd stayed in it longer.
I was a dropout.
Mhm.
I was a Weeblo dropout.
There you go.
It was a different time.
But once you achieve something like that, you have it for the rest of your lives.
Yes.
Nobody can take it away from you.
All right, I'm going to turn the meeting over to the town clerk right now for our next roll call.
Councilman William G. Faulkner.
Here.
Councilman Richard G. Quincy.
Here.
Councilman Anthony J. Sirico.
Here.
Councilman Thomas A. Garrity Jr.
Here.
Supervisor Rick Morrison.
Present. Thank you. Okay, our first order of business tonight is continuation of public hearings. The first one is proposed amendments of the zoning regulation, section 170-3 of the Code of the Town of Somers, to add that a mature cockerel be defined when it starts to crow.
So just for you guys,
Give me some background.
we're determining when a rooster is old enough to be kicked out. So, when it can start to crow, because we've had noise complaints. We deal with high-level stuff here.
So you're allowed to have chickens, right? You're allowed to have chickens, and you're allowed to have a rooster. Up until now, it was under the interpretation of the prior building inspector that, when it's 6 months old or when it matures. But what we've learned to find out is a 2-month-old rooster can start crowing and become a nuisance. So you're in northern Westchester when one of our local laws is going to address
Yes.
crowing. So is there anybody here for comment on that proposed local law? Okay, seeing and hearing none, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. And I will make a motion to adopt the amendment to the code.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Right, the second proposed local law amendment, Chapter 135 of the Code of the Town of Somers, entitled Property Maintenance, we're going to add Article 2, Section 135-8, entitled Regulation of Bamboo. This was brought to our attention over the summer. All I knew about bamboo, it makes great flooring, and pandas eat it. But I was educated. We opened a public hearing a number of months ago and had very good comments. One of our residents brought to our attention that the code that we modeled our law after was rather onerous, not only on residents but on the town, regarding we'd have to notify everybody in town about the law. And so what we did, suggested another model code, which we looked into and are in the process of putting together. And we've referred that new code proposal out to many of our boards for comment, and it's currently, we're waiting for comments back from our planning board. So I'm going to move to continue the public hearing pending planning board comments.
Okay, good.
Oh, yeah. So, and is there anybody here to speak at the public hearing about local law amendment 135? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, come up to the mic, please.
Yes.
Give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Webb Weber. I live at 2 Buenta Way. I've resided in the town of Somers since 1991. And this is the first time I think I've appeared here to comment on any thing happening in the town. But we do have bamboo. We have a decent amount of bamboo. It was actually gifted to us by people living in North Salem. I was driving by and I just saw this exquisite mass of greenery, and I should have known then when it was given to us for free that there might be a problem, but it was very generous of them. We took it, we planted it, and we did in fact plant it with the barrier. Bamboo, it is just beautiful. I do believe we have the running variety. It has grown, it's prolific, and thus far we have not received any complaints about it. And even with the bamboo barrier, yes, it is very fertile and it does have a mind of its own. First, I want to thank our town supervisor and members of the town board for their review of various bamboo codes, bamboo laws in communities throughout New York State and neighboring counties, such as the Patterson Code, Chapter 53. Second, I would like, with all due respect to our town supervisor and town board, request and appeal that you visit the sites in our town where the bamboo is planted. Not Patterson, not Long Island, not any other city or town that have implemented a bamboo law, but the local properties in the town of Somers. And view, take a look at the bamboo that is planted, and give considerations to the safeguards that the bamboo that is planted on these properties, the safeguards that they provide. The bamboo planted on our property on the entranceway east side helps to prevent increased water concentrations, excess water runoff, flooding, potential flooding conditions. It helps prevent soil erosion. Of course, it's a wonderful screening and privacy barrier. It is a natural habitat for birds. The birds gather, and it's just beautiful when you see them there. We started actually cutting down our bamboo in response to reading that potentially there may be a $250 per day fine. We cannot afford that. And it seemed quite punitive. So rather than wait, we started working to eradicate our bamboo. And in so doing, so many birds' nests were found and we had to discard them. So please be mindful that it is a natural habitat for wildlife. And in turn, it helps to deter insect infestations. It also is quite sustainable and renewable. It provides increased oxygen into the environment. It is and I just learned this not too long ago, it's an unsurpassed and natural fire starter for your wood stoves and fireplaces. As far as property maintenance goes, I think if you are able to visit the sites in our town, not in Patterson, we're not in Patterson, we're not on the North Shore, the North Fork, we're not in Montauk, or anywhere on Long Island. I'm asking the town to look at the town and the properties where the bamboo is planted here in our town. As far as maintenance is concerned, I do agree it has gotten a bit overgrown. Part of that is a result of my husband not being able to do as much as he used to. We're getting older, actually a senior citizen, and recuperating from an accident. So we're working to correct that situation. The other question I have, and I do say this with concern, with all the situations that occur in our town, I would like you to help me understand how this is a priority.
Okay, so well, let me just clear up a few things.
Okay.
So one of the regulations, owner responsibility, one of the first things stated in the code is any bamboo that has been planted or otherwise permitted to grow on any property within the town prior to the effective date of this chapter may remain on such property subject to the compliance. So in other words, this regulation is not you have to remove your bamboo. You sound like we haven't gotten complained about your bamboo. We've only learned about it because you come in to speak to us about it. But you're containing it on your property. It's only when it grows off your property into someone else's septic system or foundation and causes damage. That's what this local law really is trying to regulate.
Potentially, if we move and sell our home, which is something we are considering, we would still be responsible for the bamboo. Part of the article that I read that was in the Somers Town Record quoted someone living in our area, the person who sold the house, who had the bamboo planted initially, was still potentially liable. I don't want that in my life. So that is the reason why we, in fact, have started to work to eradicate the bamboo.
Okay.
That article.
If you could point that out in our, I don't
Okay.
care what it said in the newspaper,
Okay,
but in our regulation,
okay,
yeah, that
Okay.
does not seem correct.
And it-
wonderful,
And it
thank
certainly
you.
isn't in the Patterson Code that you're now considering.
Thank you. That's what I read in the Tap into Somers, Town Board Targets Bamboo Growth and Proposed Law, December 20th, 2018. But I'm glad that you're not considering doing that. So that's.
Well, I can't see if someone sells a house and then a tree falls from that house on someone else's property that the person who had the house originally, it seems to me an analogous situation. I don't think that's the intent of the law, that for now and for the next 300 years you're responsible for that. I think the problem is more that bamboo now, is that a problem to your neighbors? Is a potential problem? How do we limit that problem? And I think that that's what the law is about. It's not against bamboo, your bamboo, or anybody else's.
Okay.
It's just about protecting your neighbor.
And but it's also what the supervisor said, because you were saying it seemed kind of like a small problem, but the small problem can, if not kept in check like you're doing with yours, it could get into somebody's property, get into their foundation, get into a septic system, and it could turn into a costly thing for a neighbor. And so that's one of the reasons why we are acting on it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I read the December 20th article, 2018. If you could take a look at it, it does imply that potentially one of the neighbors went after the former owner of the house. I don't want that in my life.
No, I wouldn't either.
So
I don't even know how you could do that.
what I would like to
Well, that's
close with, and I so very
That's
much
private litigation.
Yeah.
We can't control that.
I so very much appreciate your response. Well, what's important therefore is that it not be included in the law, which
I don't
I'm
believe it
hearing.
is.
Wonderful,
Right.
wonderful. What I would like to urge Somers to do is to make sound decisions. An unbiased review of the laws, which you're doing, and not make decisions based on squeaky wheels. I take my responsibilities very seriously. And when I read the article, it was like, Jerry, we have to fix this. We have to do something about it. And which is why we started to eradicate the bamboo, because I don't want any problems. My goal is to go on to the next phase of my life in peace. And I want to thank you so much for hearing me and your wonderful responses. And
Appreciate that.
Can I ask you a question about bamboo, since you know more about bamboo than
Oh,
anybody
I
else
don't-
here? Yeah.
I don't know that I'm going to.
Well, you have bamboo,
Oh,
and
we
you're on a
have
first name basis at least with it. So the bamboo, it is true that you have the running bamboo. I've learned that there are two
Yes,
types. A
yes.
gentleman from Hawaii educated us on that one night. And so that running bamboo really can go underground and come out in other places.
Yes.
Has that occurred in anywhere on your property, or where all of a sudden it's on the other side of your property from where you had it first planted it? And has that happened to any of your neighbors that you know about at least?
We haven't received any complaints from the neighbors, but to be honest, we did plant the barrier there. We ordered a wonderful barrier as a safeguard, and it did in fact grow beyond the barrier. The town installed a culvert, a large pipe, I think 12 inches,
How long ago?
uh,
A while ago?
maybe 2-3 years ago.
Okay.
And honestly, the bamboo helps to prevent the water runoff. Without the bamboo, we would have to put up some type of berm or something to control the water. And I will be speaking with someone in the town to take a look at that culvert, because it does allow for excess water to run through our property. And that is one of the reasons I suggest you take a look at where the bamboo is planted and the positives that it is contributing to the specific sites it's planted on. We did take a ride up the hill. I think it's Entranceway East, and there is bamboo there as well. Is that bamboo helping to prevent soil erosion? I know our bamboo is helping to prevent soil erosion and also excess water, the ground runoff.
Right.
So,
All right,
thank you.
take your stormwater complaint to our engineering department. We'll come out and take a look at it.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for your
Thank you
comments.
so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, it's really appreciated when residents do come in and share their frustrations with, you know, actions of the town board. I mean, the reason we're talking about bamboo, because people came in and told us about their problems with bamboo. So we researched it, and just want to address your comment about don't change regulations based on a squeaky wheel. Well, there's a review process. Not only does my town attorney review it, it goes out to our open space committee, engineering, and once again, we're continuing the hearing because we're waiting to hear back from our planning board. So, is there anyone else here that wants to comment about bamboo?
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, who would have thought? Who would have thought?
So Roland, as a matter of process, the existing law is out for review by the planning board. Are you gonna make any adjustments to it, or it's gonna come
I
back?
would think so. I would
Yeah, I
think
mean,
we're gonna turn it into the Patterson model, which I think you're gonna hear back from the planning board seems preferable. But wait,
Okay.
wait, and see if that's.
Hi,
Public
Carrie
hearing.
Gross, and I am the one that started the process. So, to address yours, I understand there are responsible bamboo owners, of which you seem to be one. But you also stated you're getting older and it's harder for you to maintain it. We had a neighbor who did not do anything to maintain it, and it came into our property and became completely our problem. The lawsuit was filed before they sold the house. So once it sold, the lawsuit stayed with them. That is what happened there. And we tried everything
Address the board,
possible.
please.
We had tried everything possible so that we didn't have to sue them. We were left no options.
No,
And even then, and it was awful. You know, to address the $250 a day, I understand that that is a lot of money for some people. But for the people I have had to take on the financial responsibility for all of the trying to even control that bamboo on my property. It's financially difficult for us because we had an irresponsible owner, and that should not be a problem. When they sell their house, when you go to sell your house with a bamboo, it could be a potential problem for anyone, because if you have someone who is not going to try to responsibly maintain it, and there is a way to maintain it on flat property, grass to grass, I understand. That is not our situation. We are downhill. They did not put a barrier, they just planted it. So it is a huge problem for us. It has been a financial problem for us. We are also older and can't get out there and pull up what is essentially like a tree every year. Can't do it. So for us, $250 a day penalty, you need something to motivate the people to maintain what is there, what is clearly
a
theirs.
deterrent
Yes.
in the local law.
Yes, and the to explain to them the law when they banned or made it illegal to plant this, you as a property owner, it's grandfathered in that you can have it, but you are legally responsible to maintain it. And by maintenance, it should be 10 feet away from your neighbor's property, because once it is within 10 feet, it is on their property, is underground in their property. And it is a hardship. It looks terrible on my property. You know, we can't even address it. It looks terrible. And we did everything possible. This was my last resort. Because the lawsuit doesn't have, and it is just so that they are a barrier to protect my property, which you don't even get any guarantees, and you heard it breached their barrier. To protect the size of my property, that barrier is $60,000 for something that I didn't plant, that I spoke to them about as it started down the hill, and she promised, she'd do something, but she was sick. Either way, I was the bad guy. But it should not be on the property owners to have to maintain their neighbor's bamboo. And that's just wrong.
And clearly, that's what this local law
Yes.
addresses.
Just a question out of curiosity. If it goes underground, you say there's a bamboo barrier so how does that barrier prevent it from going underground under
Okay, so I'm
How does that
downhill.
work?
They have to, we've already been told a barrier is not the best way to take care of it. It is a way to maintain it. The best way to take care of it is to get rid of it. They won't even offer us a guarantee unless it's completely removed. But it is the most effective way to contain it. And they have to, it's coming downhill to us. that barrier has to be down, it has to be sunk real deep,
So,
which is
okay.
part of
That's
the
what I was
request,
wondering.
because then we have trees there. Trees that are, the lines are closed, that's a lot of the cost with us. The lines are closed, the trees, we have to get permits to take them down. The trees have to come down. The stumps have to be done. It's such a lengthy process for something, if they had been responsible in the first place, we wouldn't be in this position. And where it is there, that particular property, there's open space on either side, and it's just going to keep going till it hits all the neighbors on entranceway around. Not while I'm there, but it certainly will be when people come, when I go to sell my house and they see that bamboo, it will certainly be it will certainly lessen the value of my property if they know about it, if they, know what bamboo is.
Unless they own a panda bear.
Yes, well, I don't see any panda bears here. And it will certainly affect anyone owning
Or
it
elephants.
because it is a big deal to maintain it.
So you can't just trim this thing and just keep trimming it every
So what
year?
I understand,
On the
if you have grass to grass, so if it, if you had flat property and you planted it and it came across, the property owner could mow it as the shoots started to come up, and there is a way to maintain it that way,
Yeah.
if you're a responsible owner.
Right.
But you have a lot of people, you get older, you can't do it. You have a lot of people who don't bother, and then it becomes my problem. And if it goes from my property to somebody else's property, then I'm responsible for that too. And I'm not taking any responsibility for someone else's mistake that I've already had to deal with all these years. So, yes, I'm the squeaky wheel.
Well,
Nothing to
thank
get
you.
done.
You have
Thank
been
you.
heard.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you.
All right, thanks for your comments. Is there anyone else here for comment on the proposed local law? Seeing no one, hearing no one, I'm going to once again move to continue the public hearing pending the planning board's comments.
Second.
Yeah, I don't.
Second to adjourn.
Second to adjourn. Got a second?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
So moved. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Like a motion to open public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved. Is there anyone here for public comment? Gentlemen of the Scouts, this is the point of the meeting where anybody that has anything to say about the town can come in, and actually, that's when Mrs. Gross, over the summer, took the opportunity to come in and to address the board about her particular problem. So this would be the time that anyone come up and tell us their concerns about anything that's going on in the town.
So if you want more snow days, now would be the time to say we should have more snow days.
Although we have no control over that because we don't handle the
We
school.
can pass a resolution.
But we could stop plowing.
Well, that would go over well.
That would go over well.
Excellent idea.
We
On
do
behalf
have
of the
a
children
modicum-
of this town,
we do
we've
have a
stopped
modicum
plowing.
of,
I have two kids, so
It's
we're
about
not
the
doing
kids.
that.
So, if no one's here for public comment, I'll make a motion to close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Okay, moving along. Patty, department reports.
I have reports from the town clerk, building inspector, zoning board of appeals, plumbing, Bureau of Fire Prevention, Parks and Recreation, Planning and Engineering, Tax Receiver, and Director of Finance.
Thank you. Okay, our next item, business of the board is town board, item number 1. Tonight, we have with us county legislators Michael Kapowitz and Kitley Koval. These are our county legislators that represent the town of Somers. Legislator Kapowitz has the majority of Somers. Legislator Koval has our eastern part of our
Southeast.
town. Purdy's goes down to 35, I believe. And so we have our county representatives with us this evening who would like to address us on update on county business.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm a constituent. I have a complaint.
All right.
Close
I
public comment.
Yeah, close public comment.
Do you have any
I say
bamboo on your
I
property?
make a motion we
I
adjourn the
live near
meeting.
you.
Boy, it's a tough group. Yeah, look at that, huh?
We know you.
We treat them much nicer down at White Plains than we come down to
we
the
take our
county board.
lead.
Good evening, members of the board.
Good evening.
This is an indubitable continued pleasure to be here. For 22 years, I've, I think annually, or certainly even sometimes more often, and perhaps with tougher issues, I've ducked a little bit more, but I've been here on a regular basis, and very pleased to be here. And this evening saying hello, and also, as it turns out, this evening saying goodbye. It is my 22nd year as a legislator. In the past, I had the pleasure of standing here with Legislator Lamott, Ursula Lamott. She and I shared Somers. Pete Harcum, a little taller, Pete Harcum, and now have the pleasure of working with and serving with Legislator Kit Lee Koval. And the portion that is not in the 4th District of Yorktown, Somers, and Newcastle through the years and the redistricting has shrunk a bit. It is, as the supervisor indicated, the eastern side, Purdy's, and then the southern districts, 1 and 2 down there. But what I found with all 3 colleagues, and Kit Lee for sure, and continuing, is continued level of professionalism and dedication to the county at large and to Somers specifically. And Kit Lee has been a major ally, and in the short period of time we've worked together, very impressed by her and very pleased to have her as a colleague and the ultimate professional. Wonderful resume, and you can really see it in her work at the committee's level and at the full board level. So Somers has been well served, certainly by the representative from her district, and I guess time will tell history as to how well I served all of us here in Somers. My wife and I moved up here in 1989. The years have suddenly disappeared. The color in my hair has equally disappeared, but it has been a very rewarding 22-year period. And what I have handed to each and every one of you, and certainly if any constituents are interested in it, we'd be happy to send it to them, is, if you will, a report card, kind of a report card to the shareholders of the towns that I represent, and make my way to each of the 3 towns to kind of recap what been working on these many years. And the standard that I've always set out, and time will tell, is, does a public servant make their world, their legislative body, their constituents, their communities a little bit better than it was when they came into the job. And I think if you could hit that standard, and perhaps in some ways, if the answer is hopefully yes, in whether short-term or long-term perspective, then I guess that's the best you can hope, and that's what we do. That's certainly what you all do as public servants, and very proud to be your constituents. Also working very closely with you. So in the years, we work so hard for our districts, we work so hard for the county. There were 4 years in which I was chairman of the board, and during that period had a bipartisan, all legislators in the pool, if you will. All legislators had either chairmanship or a legislative leadership position. And it was an experiment in what we don't see too much of at a national level. This board has done a wonderful job, and I've been in this town for many years, of dealing with issues bottoms up, the severity and the importance and the substance of each of the issues, and at the same time done it irrespective of party label, because it's just a letter before. And I congratulate you and thank you as a taxpayer and a constituent in this town. Tried to embody the same spirit, if you will, down at the county. And I think we pretty well succeeded at it. It was equally tough times, challenging times. I've had the pleasure of serving with 3 county executives now. Andy Spano, certainly Rob Astorino, and our president, George Latimer. All have skills, all have talents, all have challenges, all have, like the rest of us, done things well, and some things that they didn't perhaps do quite as well as they would have liked. But that's what human beings are about, and that's the job we all try to do. Relative to Somers specific, some things most proud of, I guess it starts with the 652-acre Engelfly, which was a major challenge, and Rick's predecessor, Mary Beth Murphy, was the quarterback for many of us. But working with the board, working with the county administration, working with DEP, working with DEC, all the letters you could think of. We were able to pull off a $20 million deal. And that was the largest at the time, 652 acres, 1 square mile, undeveloped parcel in Westchester County. And it will forever remain undeveloped. And the environment wins, water quality wins, and our quality of life here directly in Somers and in the county wins. And I can't tell you, I've lost count how many Eagle Scouts have made that their backyard project. And every time I see it and hear it and go to one of their awards and they're doing something else with a path, or I've urged them, my eyesight's gotten really bad, to make that yellow really, really bold, because when I'm out in the middle of the woods trying to find a yellow path, I'm doing my best. They have literally saved my day once in a while as I make my way through. And it's just a great jewel, and something that long after we're all gone will be here preserved, for the town, which is certainly great. On a macro level, a bigger picture level, recently the county executive signed the North 60 deal. It's kind of ironic. We come to you today in the shadow of the news that Amazon is withdrawing their New York headquarters proposal, and one of the things that we've worked hard on as colleagues down in White Plains and Westchester that we can impact and have impacted is economic development, or is job creation at some very high level. We are not a corporate for-profit entity. We don't hire people directly in that fashion, but we can keep taxes in a reasonable fashion, make sure the roads are in good shape, the bridges are in good shape, our jail is running well, district attorney, county clerk's office, that government functioning is working well, and that the business community therefore can come to Westchester and feel comfortable that they can transact their business knowing that the county is in pretty good shape and in good shape. And occasionally we get to partner with. And the North 60 was a perfect opportunity. It's the 60 acres as one is traveling north on the Sprainbrook Parkway. If you see the medical center on your left, and then you go a little bit further, there is an open, barren area. And you go by pretty fast, and it's 60 acres, whatever it takes to time 60 acres on it, and at 60 miles an hour. But it's a wonderfully undeveloped parcel that for years and years and years has just sat there. Working with John Ferrari, who helped establish the Maria Ferrari, Children's Hospital, and then owns the Broadhurst building across the street. He has put out a proposal, a $1.2 billion with a B proposal, and we, the county, signed on to that proposal. It's a 99-year lease. We hired a number of consultants. I was chairman during that period. We worked really hard to kick the tires, make sure it was appropriately vetted, and a disposition was going to be fairly made, and the political capital was going to be both earned and spent, and in fact was. And so I guess the irony is that that deal was just signed by the county executive. That project's moving forward, where Amazon, for all its difficulty and trouble, but potential job creation, is not moving forward. Here in Westchester County, I think we're going to be a little bit better off for it. There are going to be 10,000 jobs that are going to be created, both permanent and construction jobs. That's a huge number of jobs for us here in Westchester County. $1.2 billion investment, up to 3 million square feet of research and development. There'll be a hotel out at the campus where there is none. So if you're visiting a loved one and need to stay there, there'll be a 100-room hotel. And so put it all together, we could become a satellite Regeneron, light or heavy, biotech center for this region, and perhaps grows into something for the future. And that's because this board and this county executive and the previous board had the courage to do that. And the last thing that I'll leave, in going through this, and by the way, on the financial side, just a little factoid, because those of you that know me know I love numbers. The right brain, the left brain screams out numbers, while the right brain tells the left brain to be quiet. The numbers in the 21 years that I've helped budget county, we have, I came in at a $365 million county tax levy, and leaving with a $574 million tax levy. If you do the math, it's a 2.15% average annual increase, 2.15, which is a tax cap, KAP, over that 21-year period. Kittley particularly liked that one.
She's shaking her head behind you, Mike.
She is, I'm sure.
I've heard that one before. She's saying.
Yeah, and that's
But
through
it's
some,
cute.
that's through, thank you, Rich. That is through some interesting times and some difficult times for sure, but been able to do that. But in that same spirit, along the way, the board working with our money, the county board, was able to help save the Westchester Medical Center. Again, the aforementioned facility, that campus, that medical center, I'll take you back to 1998, 99, 00, 01, 02, 03 was going out of business. That was bankrupt. One day we're hiring bankruptcy counsel, and we were able to create a lump sum of the tobacco monies that we were getting because of the lawsuit that was won for us here in Westchester and throughout the country, turned it into a lump sum, $102.3 million, subsequent refinanced and pulled out another $50 million and paid that $150 million some odd to the medical center. And in return for the impairment of people's health through tobacco usage, took the money that came to us because of that penalty and put it lump sum back to a medical center that has saved lives and has kept 5,000 jobs and $1 billion economic multiplier, and kept that facility, our trauma center, our burn center between here and Albany, alive and kicking. And they're doing quite well in terms of trying to fight their way through a mosh pit of facilities and medical companies. So not going to bore you with any more. That's, I guess, kind of the highlights. Perhaps, though, the thing that's the most fun is the very last one. Helped create the honorary name display on the message marquee outside the county center. May I, in the next few months, present to each and every one of you in an appropriate fashion a proclamation. If you'd like, you can come over to my house. I have blank ones. I'd be happy to hand them out. And then I thought years ago, what do you get when you get a day? So you get a day, and it goes in our record, right? It's kind of fun, but what do you get? And I said, wait a second. We have that electronic board. It was an early version of it where you couldn't even really read it well, and it wasn't in the center. And I said, I think, what if we put the name up there? And everyone said to me, that's the dumbest idea I ever heard. I'm not going to do that. So I said, well, I'm going to go ahead and do it because I think people like to see their name in lights. I don't know. And they said, well, what's it going to cost? I said, I don't think it costs us anything. It's just putting their name on the lights. We already have a guy typing it in. So we started it, and the first county executive said, I hate that idea. I'm going to try to get rid of it. And I said, well, if you do, I'm not going to pass your budget. So he said, all right, I'll leave it. So we kept it. No one else used it. And then the second county executive one year called me up and said, I'm going to get rid of the name marquee. And I said, well, you're not going to get your budget because I'm chairman, and that's fine. He said, all right, I'll keep it. I said, that's good. So then he started using it, and now other legislators are as well. So May, you and Somers, if there's somebody I've missed in the thousands of proclamations I've given out that has not gotten one, call my office. I'm happy to declare a day. I still have about another 200 days to go. We can even give you part of the days, like the first 12 hours and the last 12 hours, and be happy to do it because we got a great town with a lot of accomplished people, and it's been a heck of a lot of fun. So that's just kind of a trip through a little bit of the past. Legislator Koval is unfortunately a victim of my loquaciousness this evening, my reminiscing, but she's going to help us bring up to speed some of the issues that we have been working on, and you'll get to measure how wonderful she is and professional she is, and then I'll just wrap up at the end and we'll take any questions. So, Legislator Koval.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you very much. This is my first real appearance before you guys. I've been through the other town boards, but anytime you need me to come, I'm happy to come. I think it's important to continue conversations. So mine is 1 year in, not 22 years in. But I did babysit for Ursula Lamott's kids. So, I do have that going. But just who am I? I grew up in Pound Ridge. I've lived in Katonas since '91. One child went through the Katona-Lewisboro school system. The other one had to have the trip to Fordham Prep in his high school. So we got a little taste of my husband's alma mater. I'm a lawyer. I have been a lawyer, worked for 2 county executives. Well, more than 2, but more recently I worked for Spano and I worked for Astorino. Then I became the Inspector General in Yonkers, so I have a different kind of career there. And then a Title IX coordinator, which is talks about sexual education and sexual misconduct in colleges and high schools. And then I decided to run for office for the first time in my adult life. I ran in high school. That's the last time. But-
How'd you do?
Well, not to be silly, but I actually ran for vice president of the class and won. But my slogan was "Vice is nice," which was probably not the smartest one, but it did get me elected. I
There
just
you go.
didn't think about it that way.
Mhm.
Yes, I'm good.
Yeah.
I am good. Nerdy, but good. So my priorities have been, obviously, I've followed a good mentorship with Michael. One of the first challenges in March of 2017 was a terrible NYSEG storm. And I have to say that your supervisor was leading the charge on the phones, as was Michael. I took my notes, and then I wrote a letter saying this is ridiculous. And in particular, it was because on that phone I kept hearing, this is our 20 millionth time of yelling at you, NYSEG. So it's very nice to see we come together that we've actually made some real strides with NYSEG. I really feel that they listened to us about Heritage Hills, they listened to us about the nursing home, they really heard, finally, and now they bore us to death with reclosers and I don't know, all kinds of technical hardware and software that they're using. But it's good. I mean, that's been a really good thing, I think. It's helped our seniors and it's helped a lot of the residents in Somers. For me, one of the other priorities is as I looked around at our parks, I found that they were sorely neglected. Lasden has a beautiful how do you say that? Arboretum. But we need a mission statement. So we're starting to put together a little working task force to have a mission statement from the family who was part of Lasden's legacy to see if we can't have a plan for the future. Maybe even fixing up parts of Lasden that have been a little bit neglected. Also, I have 4 other parks in my district, so I'm working on those. We have been, my mantra when I started out was, who am I? Well, I'm fiscally responsible, but socially caring. So I was sure to vote and lobby for with the tax cap CAP. So we the first vote was for sure 2%, and I expect to stick with that. If not, going with a different pathway downward. We'll see how that works out. I also am an ethics, talk about nerdy, but ethics guy. Inspector generals are typically ethics in government people. So one of the bigger tasks was to reform the ethics code at Westchester County, which can be used as a model for any towns. The form that you have to fill out, at least at the county level, is onerous and ridiculous, and you need instructions for the instructions. So we look to get that form better and clearer, and if you're a volunteer, and I don't know if any of you are on the county level, we're going to have that volunteer form really only apply to people who are making policy for the county. Yes, this is deep weeds, and I guess maybe I should stop talking, but I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that I personally have been trying to work on for the last year and change. So I'll turn it back to Legislator Kapowitz to wrap it up.
Thank you. So the challenges obviously remain, and the beauty of what we do, what you all do, is you get to rent a seat, and then at some point you turn it over to the next person, and they get to rent it. That's our system, and it works quite well. And as I leave, whether I leave shortly or at the end of the year, and at this point, my term runs to the end of the year, and Legislator Culver running again, not to make an announcement, but presumably running again, and the new board will be coming in. Certainly issues that remain that impact Somers, sewage and appropriate treatment, the world of septic and sewer remains. There were years where I would, that's what I was. I was the septic representative, the sewer king. I spent 22 years with the East of Hudson. I was bestowed the 1997 Memorandum of Understanding with New York City and the 12 watershed communities and the city DEP and the county when I first came in that first day, and for the last 22 years I've lived it, and I have mostly seen more failure than success, because it turns out that's more territorial and more fiercely fought over than perhaps any other issue that's down there, and that remains. An issue that you've done a really great job in Somers, and I give a lot of credit to every one of you and the entire board, is the issue of affordable housing. And what had been a bugaboo. I remember standing up here 21 years ago and getting chided, which is a very nice way of saying yelled at, which is a less nice way of saying it, for about 45 minutes to an hour from some members on how dare I consider the county consider affordable housing in Somers. We don't need it, we don't want it, we don't want those people, we just don't want it up here. And there's been a recognition that when your mom or your dad get to a certain age and you want them to be able to live close and not have to have them necessarily stuck in your house or in bad conditions or living down somewhere else, that it's nice to have them locally. And what's going on Route 6 has worked well. Other communities, other parts of the town have also, and including that part, has recognized workforce housing, and that fair and affordable housing allows for young people who want to come back to town to be able to afford it. Municipal workers, people who work in the schools or in the banks. I remember went over to one of the local banks and making a deposit one day and quite upset, and why are you doing this, and I don't have blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, it's eligible for you. And she said, it's eligible for me? I said, yeah. I said, I don't know what your salary is. You're a wonderful bank teller. Maybe you're eligible, maybe you're not, but put in an application. And it's an opportunity for people to be able to grow up and stay and raise a family in Somers. And to this board's credit, you've proceeded there. So less of a challenge there. The first part, sewage, remains a big challenge. Economic development, keeping taxes down. We're contemplating, county executive today at a press conference today at 2 o'clock, which I attended, that he's requesting a 1% sales tax increase at the county, at the state level, that the legislature needs to grant. You are going to be losing aid under the governor's budget, more than likely. Heads are bobbing, so you're one of the towns.
Yeah, $53,000.
$53,000. We're losing aid. It's our money. And the sales tax, if shared 70-30, 70-20-10, county, municipality, and school, will provide an additional renewable revenue that you can count on, and that will allow you to then offset property tax increases or more plow trucks or whatever you think is in the best interest of town. And so that's something that always remains a challenge and is certainly going to continue to be so, the economics. So lots of other challenges, but I think we, I know we're up for the task for the rest of this session, and then we'll move on to a new legislature at that point.
So, Mike, a related question on that point. We just got some information on the sales tax.
Yep.
It's going up 1%. Okay, it fills the budget gap. Okay, we get the math. Has there been any discussion or any calculation on what we, Westchester County, might lose by raising income taxes? Are people going to start shopping
Well, it's not
in
the
Putnam
sales
County?
tax. It's not income
Or the
tax.
sales tax?
It's a sales tax.
Right.
Sure.
So are they going to shop in Putnam County, Fairfield County, other?
Sure. The reason
And I'm not challenging the numbers, but just was there any consideration to that?
Sure. Yeah, quite a bit. So, for example, 50% of commuting comes into the county. There's a tremendous number of people that come into Westchester County. Think of White Plains and the business community and the like. No, they'll be, of the sales tax increase, a good portion will not be paid for by Westchester residents, that others will be coming in to pay it. 1. 2, there'll no longer be a disintermediation on the way out, but there certainly will be no negative disintermediation on the way in. That is that, what's Putnam's sales tax right now? 8 3/8.
8.38.
8 3/8. What is Rockland's 8 3/8? What are the cities? 8 3/8. Yonkers is 8 5/8. Nassau, Suffolk, New York City, and the like. Yes, there's some bleeding that we've had with Connecticut, but if you've seen Connecticut's books lately, they're going to be closing, maybe closing the state, but they're certainly going to be closing their finances in significant ways because they're really on the balls of their feet. So we also then took a look, third part of the analysis of sales tax versus property tax. And in the world of SALT, where we've lost our deduction for property tax, A, you no longer have an advantage to have the property tax, which was deductible, but B, you now have no opportunities for anybody with property tax. They either pay it, or they lose it to the tax man, or they move. And we're not doing great on home values as well. So property tax is not a preferable way to go. And sales tax without exemption is problematic, but with exemptions of basic foodstuffs and all, you have an opportunity on the poor end, the poor socioeconomic end, to have some less impact because of that. We're moving towards internet sales tax. By the way, it looks like the state's going to want to keep all of that and not even share it with us and you. So that's another issue. And so you put it all together, there is a real body of work that says taxes are taxes. Nobody likes any of them. We live here too and pay them, but you have to come up with choices that are tough. And then the other side of the equation, which I've worked hard and literally led the fight at the legislative level in working with Mr. Astorino, was to work on the other side of the ledger, which is called the expenditure side, because that's an obvious one. Just cut spending. Well, we're down from 5,000 people. We're down to about 4,000 at this particular point. We have whole departments that have been denuded, and we have a corrections department for $220 million, and they're funny. They need the guards there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they don't give them a vacation because they need it stocked, and that's where 1,200 to 1,400 inmates reside, so you don't have to have a jail here in Somers. So no, there are certain basic expenses that the county has to cover. We are down significantly in terms of personnel, which drives cost. We cannot go any further on the expense side. We need a revenue side that covers our expenses with a tax cap of 2%. That's real increase at inflation level. This sales tax will simply bring us back up to where everybody else is. And then the final argument is, but why are only the 39 towns and villages paying it, not the other 4 cities? Legally, we can't do that because Yonkers, Mount Vernon, New Rochelle, and White Plains have their own. But guess what? They also are not going to share in the bounty. It's going to go back to the 39 school districts and 39 towns that are going to share in your sales tax. So put it all together. Great question. We ask it as well. It's making the best of bad choices, but it will hopefully then allow us to rebalance the county budget, close the shortfall of about $30 million a year, put $60 to $80 million back into the fund balance, hopefully re-earn the AAA bond rating, lowering debt costs, and put Westchester back on its excellent financial footing.
And Michael, those towns or those cities you mentioned are already at the higher level also.
3/8 or 5/8 at this particular point. Yeah, correct.
Mike, the county executive, I know when he first was discussing this, was talking about that there's this hole in the budget that needed to be filled because otherwise you can't continue to do business of whatever it was, $20-30 million. And that's when the idea of increasing the sales tax rather than the property tax came up. Was there a discussion at any time to put a time limit on that this tax will expire at a certain date unless you reauthorize it, so you fill the hole in the budget, generate more revenue, and then it either expires or you'll have to vote on it again, some legislation down the line? Was there ever a discussion on that?
There is a continuing ongoing discussion. The New York State Senate is carefully, as both bodies are, and we have a fine esteemed legislative colleague here on the Assembly side, is reviewing our home rule resolution, and they are looking for some consideration. This county executive just today announced, actually announced it over the weekend, reiterated today that with that he will not be submitting a property tax increase for the next 2 years to the County Board of Legislators. To put it in the positive, if he achieves the sales tax revenue, which will be shared with the school districts, the towns, and the bulk of it kept by the county to do all the good things I mentioned financially before, he will, in return, therefore waive any increase, barring an emergency, but any increase in request for county property tax increase. So you'll get some direct offset, and that'll stay flat for another 2 years. I, by the way, disagree. I took up smoking a couple of years ago, and I go into my backyard, and I smoke brisket and prime rib, and I'll do the baby back.
She's going to shake her head again.
I know. My mother did that too. She broke into tears after all these years. Michael, why didn't you take them? I said, I'll bring it by, and she was confused. I said, no, you'll enjoy it. She was really confused. I said, it's tasty, and she was really confused. And what's the adage when you smoke? Protein and meats, it's low and slow, right? Low and slow. 225, and you can make shoe even taste, the shoe leather tastes good. Cook it forever. I think taxes should work the same, which is if you can come in at a tax cap 1 or 1.5 or 2% forever, every year. In the good years, you put it into the bank. In the bad years, you draw it out of the bank. But the business community, homeowners, everybody knows that that's what your county, your town, your municipality you can count on. And with inflation running around 2%, you're then getting, in real economic terms, a level inflation increase at that point, adjusted. And I think it doesn't have the vagaries and the crazy vicissitudes that you get with the ups and the downs. He's going to get off of that. He's going to, however, say, I'm not going to raise property tax for the 2 years. So the other final piece is what people don't know, except for Kevin Byrne, knows, is that the legislature every 2 years needs to reauthorize all the sales tax. This is the year in which we need to reauthorize it. And I think it's this year or last year. I'm trying to remember when we did. 2 year, yeah. And so this is going to come back to them, is the point, Rich, to your point. So that in the future, this increase along with the other two pieces of the county sales tax go to the legislature, and if there's no need that can be documented at that point, it could theoretically fall off. Never seen it happen, but it is reviewed every 2 years or 3 years, as the case might be.
Last week, we had a discussion about the new marijuana legislation in the state. And the point was made that in the proposed legislation, counties and cities could choose whether or not to opt out of the sale, something like that.
Marijuana.
And I was just wondering, so we had a long discussion here about what we would do in Somers, what we could do in Somers. I was wondering whether there's been discussion at the county level, on the Board of Legislators at least, about what the county might do, what they're considering to do on that.
So we took it up at the committee, and we generally are not in favor of legalizing marijuana. We think that it should be decriminalized, but not legalized. So having now seen what the governor's proposal actually is, I think we have to go back to the table and talk about whether the county will opt in or opt out.
You do expect to have that?
Oh yes,
option.
oh yes, and I will tell you that law enforcement is not in favor of it, and all the health care professionals are not in favor of it. And what does that tell you? I mean, you know, in my opinion, frankly, if they're really going to do this, then they might as well start their tobacco settlement, or in this case, marijuana settlement now, because let's just fund that while we go. Because every healthcare professional, not only is it confusing for law enforcement, but also every healthcare professional will tell you these people are going to land in our laps. And, you know, I think it's really a mistake. You know, everybody is very interested in social justice. If you decriminalize it, it's a speeding ticket. If you legalize it, you're going to get pinched for something way worse. So I really have very big concerns about it, honestly, and most people who sat at that committee table do as well. So we will certainly be taking it up. I don't know where we will end up, but we're certainly going to listen to the partners who are really very much a part of that robust conversation, because it's going to be in their bailiwick more than anybody else's.
Would it be helpful if we, the supervisor wrote some sort of a recommendation?
Well, once you figure out what you're going to do, you bet it would. I mean, advocacy, as you know, on the local level as well as to the county, drives a very meaningful conversation. And, you know, I'd like to see more of that, frankly. I mean, I'm happy to help in any way I can.
We had a discussion last week. I think Roland may want to.
Well, the three towns I represent, North Castle, Somers, and North Salem, I've been directed in all three towns to draft laws, which if the county doesn't act, and we hope you do, to opt out, they're going to struggle to adopt their own local laws that prohibit it in their communities.
Okay, very good to know, because obviously two of those are in the district that I represent. So I'll be interested to hear what the other towns are doing, because I think it's very important to hear that voice.
Well, before we let Michael leave his post, we still have, you mentioned sewer, east of Hudson funds, 22 years of this money sitting, not being utilized. So in the remaining time on the Board of Legislators, and Kidley, we look to you to promote us as well. We've actually, later on this evening, it's on our agenda to further discuss. We've adjusted, or in the process of adjusting our proposal, where we have our two lake communities, Shedrock and Lincolndale. Way back 22 years ago, Lincolndale and Shedrock were slated to go to Peekskill sewer treatment plant. We've known over the years that this plant has taken on a lot of gray water. not only from other communities but our own. Our affordable housing and our planned hamlet up in our Baldwin Place area, that is now sewered. It's an economic boost for that area, and that's going to Peekskill. So with that in mind, we've really thinking about readjusting. We do have a sewer treatment plant over here in Heritage Hills. The plan was always to take Lincolndale out of the Peekskill process, put it into Heritage Hills. And we are now considering taking Shenorock, at least the initial homes that are most affecting pollution, down at by the lake and then into the New York City water supply, and transmitting that over to Lincolndale into the Heritage Hills plant. So what that would do is put us in a better position to get these two projects off the ground. So what you're going to see, hopefully, before you leave, Michael and Kelly, you and I, we'll be discussing sewerage for years to come, but this is getting our facilities built in Lincolndale and Shenorock in our lake communities. So we do have plans to include lake parties in the future. There will still be capacity that we can get parties over to this Heritage Hills sewer treatment plant. So with that said, I just want to please, if it gets to the Board of Legislators, which we hope it will, we're one of 3 communities that are petitioning the Northern Westchester Watershed Committee pass resolutions to move our projects, and hopefully we look for your support and your colleagues' support with getting that done.
Well, let me just say that's great. Last we had talked, it was still sending Shenorock to Peekskill, so I think that's
Yes,
a much.
this is, right.
That's breaking news for me. That's wonderful. Good.
Right. Well, we hope that, and the fact that, as Michael said, we've generated quite a bit of affordable housing, senior affordable housing, and matter of fact, town of Somers has generated 22% of the number that you needed for the federal lawsuit. So we would also hope that would be taken into consideration when we petition for our East Hudson funding.
Could you spell that out more clearly?
That's perfect.
That's pretty
it's
well
perfect.
said, I thought.
No, it's great.
That's good.
And one more thing, before we let our county legislator, Michael Kapowitz, leave, we understand this is most likely going to be your last appearance before us. And you did talk about your Jumbotron and proclamations. We have one for you. We have one for you.
You thought we'd do one for
We have a
you.
cardboard sign out on Route 100 with your name on it.
Tommy's out there holding it over his head.
Faced when I came in.
So put your brights on when you leave here so you can see Richard holding up that sign. But Mike, you and I have had a long relationship and always fighting the good fight here in Somers. And I was just going over your accomplishments here, and one of the things you had mentioned under NYSEG was you helped encourage them to reinvest. You didn't encourage them; you blasted them.
I think you stormed the building.
Yeah, at one point you did, and we were playing good cop, bad cop. I was the bad cop with. I filed a formal petition with the Public Service Commission. You, on the other hand, hit them right between the eyes, going to their emergency operations center, saying, "What is going on?"
For the record, that sounds like bad cop.
Yeah.
Not
That was
good cop, bad cop.
I think you chided them, right?
Well, the good cop.
Encourage them.
The good cop came in when Deputy Supervisor Garrity and Councilman Clenchey are heading up this utility task force, which you've been to, both of you. It's appreciated. We are now on a pretty solid footing with them, and we're getting resources. And I love that word, reclosers. So I can't hear that enough. Yeah, so Mike, and you work on the Anglefly 654 acres to be in perpetuity, that our ancestors helped build this community, but what we're delivering to the future of residents of this town is pretty special. Stewart's Farm, we're instrumental in finally getting that preserved as well. And so with that, I'd like to present you with this proclamation. Whereas the town of Somers and Westchester County are fortunate to be the beneficiary of the efforts and contributions of many fine citizens. And occasionally one person will stand out with extraordinarily willingness and ability to serve his community as an elected official. And whereas Michael B. Kapowitz has lived in Somers for 30 years with his wife Jane and their 2 daughters, and whereas Mike has been Westchester County legislator of the 4th District for 22 years, which encompasses Somers, and has served Westchester County Board of Legislators as vice chairman and then chairman from 2014 to 2017. And whereas, being the 2nd longest serving county legislator, Mike has quite an extensive list of accomplishments, which I will not go into here because we do have other business of the board tonight. Committee on Environment, Energy, Committee on Government Operations, Efficiency and Savings, has been involved in many community organizations, including the Morton Times, WALK, the American Red Cross, the Partnership Fund for the Aging Services, and the Somers Lions Club. Whereas the town of Somers will forever be grateful to Mike for all he's done in his public service career, especially through his efforts in the bipartisanship to enhance the lives of the town of Somers residents. Now, therefore, be it resolved that on behalf of the entire town board of the town of Somers, I, Rick Morrissey, Supervisor, do hereby officially express our gratitude, thanks, and appreciation to Westchester County Legislator Mike Kapowitz for his unwavering service, and hereby declare Friday, February 15th, 2019, as Mike Kapowitz Day in the town of Somers, given under my hand and seal this day, 14th day of February, 2019.
Thank you very much.
On Valentine's Day, you get love at the town board.
Who's gonna take care of golf? I don't know.
All right.
This is your proclamation.
Oh, there we go. All right. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
You're professional.
And
And we still expect you to work hard. Still on the dime.
Michael, I'm gonna limit myself to 2 minutes because obviously I could go on for, all of us could go on for a lot longer. But as you just said, as I walked over, for the last 12 years, you've been my parade buddy. You've been all of my scout. You and I are always there giving the proclamations. As you know, my mother loved you. Couldn't say enough good things about you. But one of the things that people don't know about Mike is, even away from politics, when my father passed away, I discovered a little-known stamp collection. And here's Mike, who is busy as, I think at the time, chair of the board, and also has other responsibilities that he does. And I mentioned it to him, and he came to my house and spent, a few hours there looking through which I was hoping for the $1 million stamp. There was, the stamps were worth about 3 cents each. But that's what Mike does. Mike, he's a colleague, but if you're with him for more than 10 minutes, you're friends with him. You never want to speak after him, because his off-the-cuff speeches you just can't compete with them. So you always want to go first. So I won't miss him for that reason at some of these events. But Mike, I could go on forever. You're a class act. You know how much I love you, and we wish you much success in your next your future endeavors.
Yes, that's
Here,
true.
here.
And I've known you for longer than you've been in the town. I mean, we talked about, I don't know if you remember, we were discussing where would you move to? Would you come here, somewhere else? We're discussing school districts and everything like that. But I can say this about you. I've learned a lot of things from you. I know when I've had a question about something. So what do you think about this? It's always well thought out. It deals in facts, which in today's political environment is quite unique, as a matter of fact. And, and so I come away better educated. And I thank you for that. And I also would like to say what you've often said when you've given out proclamations. If you get stopped by the police tomorrow, show them the proclamation. It will do you no good, but you can show it to them. And I know you said that. We all appreciate you.
One of the benefits of the proclamation is tomorrow you can park anywhere in Somers for free.
Yeah. How about that?
The train station.
So Mike, when the kids, they used to spend time together and Christmases together, and that was a lot of fun. But when I first decided to run, I guess it was maybe 7 years ago, you were one of the first people I called. You just kind of gave me the lowdown. Told me not to do it.
Where were you when I was running?
And I said I'm running I'm running with the other team, and he's like, whatever. That's it. But he's always been helpful. I mean, when it comes to the issues, what's going down in the county, and I have to share Rich's sentiment. You always put things in perspective, and we're both numbers guys, so we kind of talk that same type of language. Wish you the best of luck. We just wish you could stay. I'm sure we're going to hand the ball off to you for maybe 1 or 2 more touchdowns before you leave. So, and we'll see you around town. Some breakfast.
And Mike, I was always impressed with your spirit of bipartisanship, that you've helped support the greatest town on earth here in Somers, Down County, and you've helped make us a little bit even greater. So thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to make a final comment, which is going to be work-related. Sorry about that, but we do have an issue with, we have a Plumbrook Bridge. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection wants to tear it down. It probably needs to be torn down, but this town is in need of that bridge. It's a major artery, and we have support for rebuilding it from the state police, local police, fire department, EMS. And so I brought this to the attention of the county executive. The DEP needs approval from the county to remove the bridge. We don't have any problem with them removing it, but before they do, we would like an assurance that it's getting rebuilt. So I just want to make sure my county legislators that are on the same page and you understand the need, the public safety concern about it.
Mike, I'm feeling like I'm feeling that being a lobbyist would be a nice career path for you.
I have one suggestion, if I may. One of the most compelling things for paving 684 was the letters from the Volunteer Ambulance Corps and the Volunteer Police Department saying how bad it was. So if you have letters from any of those folks that you just mentioned, I think they would be very compelling. I put them in the record when it comes before us as a reason why we're not going to rule on this until we get assurances.
Okay, so, I mean, I can certainly share those letters with you. We applied for a New York Bridge grant in 2016. We were not successful. It was a maximum of $5 million. We probably need at least twice that to get that rebuilt. But we sent all that information down to Susan Spear.
Okay, so we'll get it from her.
Okay, you can get it from her, or I
Okay.
can resend it to you.
Right, no, it's just because when it comes to the Board of Legislators, we don't always have a whole packet like that, so that would be very helpful, thank you. I'll get it from her though.
Will do.
And just one more thing on that note, the public safety is the most important issue, but at the same time, just in terms of balance and fairness, there are no county roads in Somers. We've got a couple of bridges. Most of them are not used. This is one that isn't used because it's not roadworthy. So if we could just have one wish from the county with regard to roads and bridges, this would top the list.
No. Put that in.
Well, we have to
come
go,
visit you
we
in
have to
your
go to
office.
the next
We wanna see
person.
it on the
We
wall.
only have one.
Could you name the bridge? You've never had a
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much. Okay, this evening we are we're graced with many legislators that represent the town of Somers, and I'd like to recognize and call up for comment Assemblyman Kevin Burns.
After that nice comment about following Legislator Kaplowitz, I'm privileged and honored to follow Legislator
Good luck.
Kaplowitz. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
We're gonna give you 3 minutes.
3 minutes. I just want to say thank you to the supervisor and town board for always having a great dialogue with myself and my office. As you know, our district office is located just north of Somers and right outside the village of Brewster. Just starting my second term now, representing Somers, Yorktown, and most of Putnam County. And this is something I try to do with all the towns when I'm coming back from Albany, just to take a quick pop in and give you a little update on what's going on with our legislative session. Certainly, there's a lot of things that have been going on. There's a new dynamic up in Albany, in case you don't know, with new majorities in both chambers. And the first month did concentrate a lot on some new social policy, but really right now we're in the throes of budget season. And I'm surely happy to answer some of the questions that may come up from the comments made earlier about the state budget. Our state budget, just so you know, it was about $170 billion this past year. The governor's executive proposal right now is a $175 billion budget. That's a lot of taxpayer money. It's more than most states across the country. It's more than some countries. So I think that's just good to put that in perspective. And there's a long process in place. We start with the executive budget proposal. We go through budget hearings. We just finished our last budget hearing this week up in Albany. I participated in every budget hearing that I'm privileged to participate in as a member of the Health Committee, Transportation, Government Operations, and Labor. After that, each of our chambers put forth a one-house resolution, and with the Assembly's budget proposal, the Senate's budget proposal, we go into our committees and negotiate basically with the governor. That's in just a real kind of a breakdown. But I wanted to just give you a little snapshot on that. We are facing some challenges from the executive budget's proposal, the governor's proposal. It was alluded to earlier by the legislator Kaplowitz, loss in AIM funding. If you didn't know, the governor zeroed out any municipality whose AIM funding took up less than 2% of their budget. It's something I strongly disagree with because I believe it actually punishes municipalities that were fiscally responsible. And as many of our leaders in county and local government know, they're forced to deal with a lot of mandates from the state and from the federal government. And it's important that our state provides funding for those mandates. And this is just a small drop in the bucket, but it's important, particularly when we're facing with a tax cap. It's something I support. But when you're talking about half of 1% in funding and you're looking at a 2% tax cap, that can make or break you potentially. So I know the AIM funding for Somers last year, I believe, was about $50,000, $53,000. That's something that we're fighting to restore. There's a lot of bipartisan support for it. I've spoken with colleagues in both chambers, in both parties, both conferences. This is something that affects elected representatives in the legislature across the board. So I'm hoping we can negotiate with the governor to get that restored. He has tried this in the past. For those that remember when the governor first introduced the Shared Services Initiative, it was initially contingent on do this or you lose your AIM funding. And it was really more of the stick than the carrot. And the legislature negotiated it and said, well, let's offer the match and make sure people get their AIM funding. So that was something that the legislature was able to restore. Some other challenges that we're seeing.
Kevin, can I just stop
Sure,
you there
go
for
ahead.
a second? Just so
Certainly.
I understand, because I really don't understand yet what the
Sure.
rationale is to eliminate that funding. What's the argument in favor of that? That this is so unnecessary. Who is in favor of unnecessary spending? Nobody should be.
Mhm.
So what's the argument that I'm not getting?
Well, I can't speak for the governor, but I can tell you that his initial argument was we're going to have the internet sales tax, and that sales tax will go to county governments. Not every county shares their sales tax with towns, but he was going to say you're going to get that windfall. I strongly disagree with that because, while I do think because of the recent Supreme Court decision from last year with the Wayfair Dakota case, it actually is constitutional. There was constitutional concerns initially about interstate commerce. But I bring that up because he said that, those dollars will go back to local governments. The reality is, it's not like it's a new funding stream from a new entrepreneur, a new business. It's still money from taxpayers that you're going to be dipping into. But that was the initial argument I read about in reports from the governor. But I can't speak for him initially. I can tell you there's broad support to restoring it.
So Kevin, there's like something like a $4.4 billion deficit in terms of gap, right?
And
At
recently,
168 billion, you're talking 175.
recently the governor talked about an income tax revenue shortfall of $2.3 billion as well. That's a challenge when we're looking at our spending, and we got to find out where we're going to right-size government. There's certainly some big ticket items that people look to, that I look to, of $175 billion. About $70 billion is spent on our Medicaid program, and we deliver those services in a very unique way that's different than most states across the country. And a portion of that cost actually gets passed down on the county governments, which is another unfunded mandate. A couple of years ago, before my time, I can't take credit for it. It's one of the good things the state did was they assumed any growth in that program, the state was going to absorb those costs. Certainly, I don't think that helps our towns, but it does help the local property taxpayer. But there's a lot of places that we can look to saving money. One of the bills we did pass earlier this year, early voting. I know there's a lot of folks that support it. I personally supported making it easier for absentee balloting without an added cost. It's still unclear what that cost is going to be on county governments. And I know some counties absorb the entire cost of the Board of Elections. Some counties charge some of that cost back to the towns. I'm not really sure if Westchester does. I think Westchester absorbs that cost. No, you charge it back? Okay. So if that's an unfunded mandate, that then gets filtered back to the towns. I can tell you in Putnam and in Dutchess, Putnam County said it's going to cost them well over $350,000 to shoulder that. The Dutchess County executive told me it was going to cost over $900,000. I have not received an estimate from Westchester, but quite frankly, Westchester is a massive county, so I know they got to get their numbers straight. But it's a big cost. So I think we're going to have to look at a lot of these things if we want to implement them. But that's to address the deficit and the income tax revenue shortfall. Legislator Kaplowitz did talk about the $3 billion. He talked about Amazon, right? So if it's not going towards a subsidy, maybe that could be something that can be looked at too. Tom, you raised your hand?
I was waving.
Oh, you're waving.
We're
I'm
leaving.
sorry. Okay.
I missed Mike. I was waving.
So it's a matter of timing. How's this going to conclude? I mean, by April 1st?
So going back towards the process, because honestly, when I first got elected, it is you got to figure out all the different steps. The budget deadline's April 1st. Okay, so in March, we have next week off in session. We go back to Albany, and again, each house puts forth their resolution, and then they break up into their individual committees and they really negotiate. The last, not this past year, but in 2017, we were a few weeks late. I don't think that will happen this year, only because, I could be guessing a little bit here, but the fact is, with the majorities all being from the same party, I think it's less likely that we'll have a late budget, and it's likely that it will happen by April 1st. But all these challenges need to be worked out. And the cuts that are going to affect our local governments and the local property taxpayer are significant. They're not significant. I know people have said it's an insignificant number. You're talking about less than 2%. It's very significant, especially when you're talking about towns trying to stay under a tax cap. I mentioned AIM funding. There's also the Extreme Winter Recovery funding that we lobby for each year. And if you're not familiar with that, you may be familiar with the CHIPS formula, right? That goes to the towns. CHIPS is maintained flat. It's been flat for 7 years. I'm advocating for an adjustment in that to increase that. I know Councilman Faulkner went to our task force meeting up in Patterson. I want to thank you, Bill, for attending that. We did publish a bunch of recommendations from our Transportation and Infrastructure Task Force, focusing on CHIPS, and we were actually advocating that the extreme winter recovery dollars should be rolled into CHIPS, so we don't have to have this battle every year with the governor, because he suggests it's a one-time shot of funding. But extreme winter recovery, that's $65 million statewide, and Somers got a little over $40,000 last year in that. That's been zeroed out. So all this has an effect.
So right now, we're looking at 93,000 less from the state
Correct. Just from those things.
for those two.
Yeah.
Now, some would say, well, you might get something from the sales tax and the internet sales tax. Again, to me, it's not. This isn't money that grows on trees. You're getting it from taxpayers that also just live in the area. So, and I think we all know the reality of living in New York. We do have the highest total tax burden of any other state when you add all of our taxes together. So it's a challenge that we're always trying to face and rein in taxes and control spending the best we can while delivering the best services possible. And that's one of our challenges and jobs as public servants. But yes, that is what we're facing right now. But again, this is the governor's initial executive proposal. He's known for doing this, and it's been a negotiation tactic, and we get it restored. We have a new dynamic in Albany. So it's important that we speak with all of our legislative leaders and advocate. This isn't a partisan issue. You know, these local property taxes crush everybody, and we want to make sure that we do everything we can to bring these dollars back. Every time I have an opportunity to bring back your tax dollars, I have some constituents say, "Oh, thanks for bringing that money." It's not like I signed a check. It's not me bringing back your money. It's your money to begin with. I'd rather you just keep it. But if this is the avenue I gotta take to bring it back to you, so be it. I'll do it.
I agree 100% with that attitude, because what I don't like is when they say we're not going to do this, and then they negotiate and they give it to it, and it's like a big win. It's not a win. You were taking it to begin with, so it's not a win if you get it back. It's something that should have never been taken away.
Playing the game.
I was I think last week, with WMOA, which is the Westchester Municipal Officials Organization, had a press conference down in, where was that, lower part of the county, and where supervisors from all over Westchester spoke about how much money they were losing, how these funds are discretionary for municipalities, can go to quality of life things, and for Somers to lose 53,000 will have an impact here.
That's 1%.
So
Tax.
yeah, and that's probably why they took it. So get it back for us.
You add it all together, it adds up. Even library aides, I know every town's a little different on that. Some their own special districts for libraries. I'm not sure how it works in Somers. It's different. Okay, so but library aid was cut too. And again, if you're getting any support from the property taxes on that, it all has an effect. But that's I don't want to just talk about doom and gloom. There are some good things we're getting done. But it's going to be a challenge. Just to start a negotiation. One of the most egregious things that I see every year, at least since I've been in Albany the last 3 years, the governor cuts a program called the Joseph P. Dwyer program. You may be familiar with it from Putnam County. They had this big chow down for our veterans. Westchester actually is a beneficiary of it too, just a much bigger county. It's a peer-to-peer program for our veterans, and particularly helps veterans with different mental health issues, and sometimes it's just talking to somebody. But Westchester gets $185,000, and counties all over the state get some of this money. That was zeroed out, and it's something that we continue to have to battle for. And then it's like you said, it's a victory lap, and it's we shouldn't be playing games and negotiating with people like our first responders or our veterans. People ask me what are your priorities. I always talk about tax relief, job creation, ethics reform, and then making sure that we provide for public health and safety, right? And that certainly includes making sure we protect our veterans and our first responders. But that's I did want to mention just a few of those things. When I mentioned the shared services initiative, just something to bring up because I know I've also had conversations with Senator Harkin about this. It's more prudent for Putnam, but one thing, even when we had a meeting with the county legislators recently, while they were advocating for what they wanted from Albany, one of the things they brought up was shared services initiative. It has maintained funding from previous years, but one of the things I've heard is we've all been sharing services for years. And which is, I know that's true here locally and in many of the towns in the region. And the other thing I hear about is, why are we just pointing fingers? And I don't think it's pointing fingers if it's an opportunity, but why are you just looking at the local municipalities, the towns, and not the school districts? You know, I'm a firm believer if you're gonna have a shared service initiative and you're gonna have people sit around the table, you know, more minds, more people makes more opportunities, and school districts should be sitting at that same table the same way that the chief executive officer of every town municipality should. It doesn't cost you any money to participate, but if you're gonna be serious about a shared service initiative, it should include school districts because for the most part it's 70% of our property taxes, and if there's an opportunity for them to share services, they should be included as well. So that's a bill that I put in. That Senator Harkin said he would put in as well. So that's just something I've, we're reintroducing. I've shared it with the county legislature. So if they want to add it to their packet, it's something they can consider. So I'm sure I could talk forever about almost anything. There's been a lot of controversial bills that have been passed and discussed in the last month. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about that or the budget.
Well, I have a question. Just recently I sent you up some wish list items. One of the things you actually were very successful with last session was the Assembly passed legislation approving peace officer status for court attendants.
Mm-hmm.
The town of Somers and I think Ossining would like to relieve our part-time police officers from being in our court if we had a court attendant with police officer status. Now I know it passed the Assembly, congratulations for that. It passed the Senate, and then it went to the governor's desk, where nothing happened.
The governor vetoed it. He actually vetoed it. Yeah, the governor's council called me for probably about 4, maybe 6 o'clock that evening, that like the last day that basically he could sign it, and they vetoed it. I haven't. The traditional response he has is they would rather see a statewide proposal. I said that's fine. Then let's do it. Let's get it done. But in the meantime, let's protect our folks here. Remember, let's protect our courts. And it's something that, like you said, in Ossining, this isn't a partisan response because this is something that people want from both sides. It's something I'm continuing to have discussions with my colleagues because if there is an opportunity to have like a statewide opt-in, then fine, let's do it. I could care less who gets credit, whose name is on the bill. Doesn't matter to me. I just want to get it done.
So is there going to be a renewed effort to?
I plan on reintroducing it only if nothing else as a plan B. I think we've reintroduced a residency requirement for the same thing already, and we're still introducing bills. It's still early in session, but if I'm going to do the same exact thing and the governor's just going to veto it again, that's not exactly where we all want to be. We want to fix the problem.
Something that's statewide, maybe.
That would be my preference. And again, I have colleagues that are in the majority and in the minority that want this. So if there's a statewide solution and the majority member wants to push for it, I will be behind them pushing all the way.
Well, just so the public, this is exhausting though. It's been a year, right? And you go through all of this, and it gets down to the last signature, and essentially it's back to square one.
Right. I have to say, Kevin was great.
It's exhausting.
He shows me takes a picture of the jumbotron up in Albany where the bill was being.
It was like midnight too. It was they passed it like really late. They have a reputation for doing that.
Well, kudos. getting that accomplished.
Kevin, one thing, if you ask people around here, we don't have any county roads in the county, but we do have state roads.
Mhm.
And that is something you hear people talk about, as I'm sure you know. We know that some of the roads are planning to be repaved before all the wheels in Somers have been damaged. Do you have any update on that? Do you have any clout you can do? Any advice? I'm sure it's something that would be, you'd want to do or do more of. Can you just talk about that for a bit of what we're going to do and what we can do?
Sure.
Can I follow on to that question? Is there any sort of timetable or schedule to that? Because on the one hand, there's been progress made, 100 and some of the other roads, so that's fantastic. How do we complete the project?
Sure. So I know last year we were advocating for the 202 Route 100, and we got some of that done, which is good. But we do have to continue to be advocates. I certainly speak with the DOT. I met with the DOT Commissioner Paul Carras just about 2 weeks ago because I'm on the Transportation Committee. And the last time we had the budget hearing, I was the squeaky wheel. And I don't need to be the loudmouth. I'd rather get something done if it's with honey instead of vinegar. But we sat down, we had a nice conversation, and I made sure I highlighted the needs that are not just in Somers but Region 8 in general. I think the Hudson Valley is underserved with the resources that we get. But I specifically called out 202s, 684, 22. Many of our state roads. I feel like for whatever reason, I have a tremendous amount of state roads in the district I serve, the 94th Assembly District. We have state roads all over the place, and in many instances, the state roadway is the hub of the towns and the counties. It is like the main thoroughfare. It's how people get from one side of town to the hospital. And we talk about, I said it was budget season, right? It's also pothole season. So when I was talking about extreme winter recovery funding, with the DOT commissioner, I said, 22, for example, these state roadways need our support. The state needs to follow through on its commitment. And I said, I know there was potholes before, but I'm sure the plows just hit. I'm sure there's more potholes, and it's only gonna get worse. I have a copy of the report right here. I can give you certainly a copy of that digitally or a hard copy with some of the recommendations the task force made to make it easier. The DOT was required or expected to give an annual report of the condition of our bridges and our roads. That really hasn't happened. They did tell us in the middle of the budget hearing that we were going to get it in a couple of weeks. I'm still waiting. But there's recommendations we have on how we can make WBE requirements more comparable to regions rather than a statewide threshold. Talked about the way we use our dollars for transportation. There's an expectation, and I think it's justified by our constituents, that when we pay all this money on our gasoline tax, our motor vehicles fees, that these dollars should go towards infrastructure. We have something called Dedicated Highway Bridge and a Trust Fund, and the vast majority of it goes to pay debt service and state operations. Only 27% of that dedicated fund goes towards capital projects. That's a real problem in how we fund our infrastructure. And we have money for it. I mean, I just looked at the statewide budget is $175 billion right now as proposed. And we certainly put in tons of money that people expect to go towards infrastructure that should go there, whether it's to support our local roadways or our state roads. But certainly Region 8 is something that I've been very loud and vocal about because I believe it has been underserved. The staff is great. I'll say it. The DOT staff, I think, works really good.
So I've been told that 139, Route 139,
Yes.
will be repaid in 2019. So if we have the conversations with the DOT, we just possibly confirm that. One other initiative that I would like you to test the waters on up there is recently on 139 actually, on a Friday evening, there's a myriad of potholes, but there was the mother of all potholes took out about 9 vehicles. They were all lined up, and then people helping them. So it turned into a traffic nightmare. Police had to be there. Obviously, we called the DOT, and over the weekend, they came and they put cold patch in that got pulled up and tires. we have a good relationship with our local DOT guys, but we are precluded from doing any kind of repair on a state road. We made an investment a number of years ago. We purchased a asphalt reclaimer, recycler, where we put millings into it, and a bar of tar, and it makes 2 tons of hot pad.
It's a great investment. I learned a lot about it this past year, how you can use RAP and really stretch your tax dollar to repave and resurface roads.
So the DOT did last week and the weekend before that get out there. I guess they got a hot box somewhere. We've had ours here for a number of years. We've offered to loan it to them. But short of that, we would like, and my highway superintendent would probably oppose this, but we would like permission to go out and do emergency repair work so our residents don't suffer damages to their vehicles or risk their lives. I've seen people drive in the wrong lane to get around it.
Just today I did that.
And if we had the ability to go out, make that patch, and then charge back, the labor and materials to the state, I think it would benefit the municipality, it would benefit the state, and it's a lot of extra work for us. But I would rather err on the side of caution and public safety than not making the request to be able to do that.
I mean, everyone thinks those roads, all roads, are the responsibility of the town. How would anyone really know that, unless they're really paying attention? It doesn't go to the state. We hear all that, and it just seems that, okay, those roads are in our town, and just the whole system of, yeah, you got a road in your town, yes, it's a hazard, yes, it's causing safety problems, no, you can't do anything about it. It just doesn't seem to be real logical. I couldn't redesign a whole system of how you're going to run all the roads in New York State, but if there's something a discussion comes up in Albany, I think the supervisor is right.
The easy answer is to have the money to pay for it, so it's done at the right time.
Well, that's
Bob,
always
can I just
that's
add-
always part of the
It
discussion.
becomes an arbitrage.
It is a public safety issue when we talk about our roads, and I always talk about it. And I'm not a big believer. I don't like picking winners and losers when we use tax dollars. And when you invest in infrastructure and local roads, the great thing about it is everybody benefits. The school district benefits, the town benefits, the fire department benefits, the library benefits. Everybody uses our roads to get from A to B. It is the best thing to invest in, and we've had this issue in other towns in my district. I might regret this, but certainly if there's a specific issue, reach out to me. If you're not getting the appropriate response from the local DOT officials, I can certainly communicate not just with the same people, but the regional coordinator who I know, Lance McMillan, as well as the DOT commissioner, if it needs to come to. I've had to do that before, and again, if it is a squeaky wheel, so be it. Do whatever I got to do to get the job done. But that's still not a long-term fix. That's just a short-term fix. I did receive your correspondence in response about any local legislation and your point about having the ability to take care of those roads. That's something that I'm certainly willing to look into.
But to follow on to your point about it being a long-term fix, to the supervisor's point, we have the infrastructure to do it ourselves. We just don't want to be precluded from fixing ourselves and helping ourselves. Now, we understand that the state owns the roads, but what about plowing? When there's a snowstorm, Somers Highway Department plows the state roads. There's some sort of agreement where it's worked out, and it's somewhat economical, somewhat fair. So if we could follow that model, is there a way where you just
That's a great example to strengthen that argument. I think that's a great example because we do that almost everywhere. We do that in a lot of places. My entire district is basically functions like that. With their, it's like a mutual aid contract with salting and plowing.
Right.
So, any other? Go ahead.
No,
Supervisor.
we're going to keep you busy with requests, and we appreciate all you're doing for us up there.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Keep up the great work.
I know there were some things brought up earlier. Just in case you have questions, always reach out to me. 3 Star Ridge Road, Brewster, New York, 10509, 845-278-2923. Always feel free to give me a call. The internet sales tax is, again, something that I traditionally in the past was not in favor of because I believe it had constitutional issues. But it really is, if we do it now, it's doing what every other state is doing. So I don't really have any opposition to it anymore. But that was something that was expected to come back to the county, to town. So at least in Westchester. But
And is it still?
we're still working on it with the governor. But that was the expectation. So if that's changed, that's news to me. But there's that, and certainly the legalization of marijuana. It's something that I've opposed, and I bring it up because you asked and about it earlier. It also creates an entire new state agency called the Office of Cannabis Management, and the opt-out provisions, which I'm sure will cost money. The opt-out provision is for counties or I believe cities of over 100,000, and I do find it bizarre that in the same budget we're talking about adding all these different regulations and bans on the tobacco industry, and in the same breath we're talking about let's legalize marijuana. And I personally find it disingenuous to make that argument as a way to raise revenue. I think it's inappropriate. If you're going to make the argument because it should be treated like alcohol, then make that argument, but not as a revenue raiser.
I agree with you.
Yeah, the supervisor had some statistics last week at our work session meeting, and although it's going to raise whatever, 300 million, okay, fourfold of that is going to be raised in cost in terms of medical costs, and you're a previous first responder, so we've seen the horrors of that. Our law enforcement, our police departments, fire departments, emergency rescue, so hospitals, so all of those expenses are going to go up 4 times the amount that the revenue is expected to be generated. I can't see how this is a responsible direction.
In the Law Journal, New York Law Journal this week, there was an article about it, and it said that it was likely now that the legalization vote would be separated from the budget vote and would perhaps not occur until later this year. They said maybe June or July. Is that?
That's very possible. I can tell you I've had conversations with my Senate counterpart, and there are new majority members in the Senate that have expressed if we're going to do this, it should be a separate policy discussion and separate from the budget. I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
Whether you support it or you don't, I think it merits its own discussion. I believe Senator Harckham has mentioned he was looking to do some sort of public hearing at some point, and I would certainly just keep your eye on that to make your own individual voices heard. But I also have questions about the opt-out provisions. We have towns that are able to zone out and basically ban vape shops. So if they can do that, they should be able, if they want to, do it for any sort of marijuana shop. That'd be my belief if it happens.
What's the logic, do you think, of not permitting towns and villages and small cities to also have the opt-out provision in the state law?
I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. I don't know. I could tell you in some smaller counties, if one town opts out, it's basically like the county opted out because the town is so big. But I don't see the logic in that. But I have it's tough for me to really dig into that when I have a different perspective. So
I think that should be a separate vote, though. To put it into the budget is a way of hiding really the vote, and it is an important issue. And I mean, I'm sure you can argue both sides. People in town have approached you with that. I certainly have a point of view that it doesn't benefit the public health to legalize it. But I understand that there is an argument that people will have. But I think to put it into the budget vote is a way of hiding. What are you going to do? What position do you take on this, and why do you take that? So I would support that proposal.
we do that unfortunately all the time.
Yeah.
But the last budget bill we vote on, it's the biggest one. It has all the taxes and revenue in it. And you know what its nickname is? The Big Ugly. And it's a name that it's earned because it always has, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and they call it sausage making because people don't like how it's to watch it made, but they like the end of how it tastes, and it's something I strongly disagree with, and we try to push back. But I do just a point of clarification. I think medicinal marijuana is definitely different and it
And
has
it's
proven
legal.
it's been
And it's
able to
legal,
help
right?
people, and it's and I don't think that needs to be put under OCM. This new, we got a lot of acronyms in this state, you know. But that's, I just wanted to bring that up, just in case there's any other questions. But also, just, you know, my door's always open. Reach out if you have questions for or against, even on this, on things like the what the county's asking for in the sales tax. I'd like to know your thoughts, because I can tell you as a Putnam resident who lives in Mahopac, right on the border, you know, a lot of us shop at Somers Commons because it's a little cheaper, and if you do it every time, you save about, you know, $400 at the end of the year. And you're really on that border as Somers and Yorktown too that I represent. So if you have any questions or concerns or suggestions about it, I would be eager to hear your points on that as well.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
doors
you,
always
Sam.
open here for you. So you're way back from Albany. Feel free to stop in anytime.
Awesome. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
All right, which
Number 2.
Yeah, last week, did we say Valentine's Day is going to be short meeting?
Every time we're gonna be short.
Paula, cancel that dinner thing.
Okay, well, I'll take the next topic, Independence Day celebration discussion. It's scheduled, we're gonna have it on the 29th. Number 3.
I think we should have it.
No, just to let you know.
And fill up a Pepsi.
Yeah, it's gonna be up at Pepsi.
By the way, that was your best agenda item ever.
Most of all of the feedback I got, it was a positive. People really enjoyed it.
Yes.
The only critique we got was that it was limited by how many people could get in there. So the committee has already begun to meet, and one of the solutions may be providing some bus service. So to be continued, and I'll give you updates on that. So germane to Independence Day celebration is one of the cornerstones of the event is the 2019 fireworks contract.
And I gotta tell you, in the 12 years we've been on the board, the fireworks always seem to be getting better, and the cost has not increased.
It's not increased since the day we were on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's been the same cost, and every year
You
it
can't
seems
find
to be.
anything else.
It seems to be a
It
little bit
hasn't
better.
increased 10 years.
So I'm going to quickly make a motion then before they change the rate to authorize the supervisor to execute the contract for $10,000 for this year's fireworks system.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. Now, the town's water sewer project and discussion path forward.
The one you
Last-
just discussed. The one you mentioned, right?
Yeah.
We should have just passed it then.
Right. So the change really that has occurred since last week is did some research on what it would take to get Shedrock into the Peekskill Sewer District.
Yeah.
And you heard my discussion with our county legislators. And I did send you an email this afternoon. I received at 1 p.m. today from our town engineer. You know, I did put some pressure on him. I said, look, knowing now what I do know about the process to get an approval from the Board of Legislators, it would probably take a year and a half. There are funds down there slated, $10 million for Somers. I want to remove that barrier. So what I asked Joe to do was, could you give us a plan, estimate for an engineering report, map, plan, and review? He's done this for Lincolndale because we have approvals from an agreement with Heritage Hills Sewer to take sewage from Lincolndale into their plant. We had discussions with them about the option of putting Shedrock gray water over there as well. And at that point in time, he would take that under consideration, but he did give us a commitment for Lincolndale. So now we're going to go, we went back, I asked Joe, I said, give us an estimate for getting that map plan and review done for Shenorock going to Heritage Hills. And if you should have all read the memo at this point, but basically what he's saying is if he can combine the Lincolndale study with the enhanced Shenorock study, he could do that for $140,000, which would basically, he could save us money if we did them separately. The add-on for Shenorock would have been like $62,000, but he's saying if we can put them both together, he could do it for $140,000.
Yeah, that sounds good. But I think it's just going to come out of the grant money as well at some point, right? That's the hope.
The whole thing is that $10 million is reimbursements. So as we spend and things are eligible, yes, in fact, we would.
Just let me ask you one thing. You know, I am very clear that, you know, the Board of Legislators, that option almost puts all the money in jeopardy because it's taking, but that was our first choice. Does that take it off the table now?
No.
Concurrently, aren't we? We're still
Still
gonna
gonna push.
Yeah,
the
we-
We're
Board
still
of
going to push the Board of Legislators to get
Okay.
into Peekskill, but at the meantime, so we don't have the money sitting there and possibly being used for something else, we'll start the projects. And what I like about it, and as I told Rick earlier, is, you know, last time, and maybe it was just reading the proposal incorrectly, I thought we were sort of picking one or the other. Here, if we can start the infrastructure in both communities, I think it's a good path forward. While again, we still wait on hopefully the Board of Legislators being able to do something.
So this is a win-win all around. So it gets it started. We got two things working on it, and we're not really, you know,
Right.
we're not really precluding ourselves to the first
In order
choice.
to recover the money from the districts to be formed, or from the district to be formed, you really need to speak to your bond counsel, because there's some sort of an authorization that you need to adopt to allow you from this point forward to be able to recover those engineering dollars.
If we
Why
can't
is the
take it out
bond
of the
council
10 million.
involved with that?
Well, you're going to need to have some bond to fund the construction. I don't think it's all covered by $10 million.
Okay, so we're talking about
But this
$140,000.
$140,000 in order to recover it at a later date, from whether it's the financing or the grant, you have some authorizations that you have to adopt now, so that those people are advised that this money will come out of the district to be formed.
But-
and it's not a general town
But it's gonna come out.
obligation.
But we
Oh,
might
okay, I
might
understand.
finance it as a general town obligation.
You can't.
You can't. You can only benefit. You can
You
only
can't. It's
charge
just
the
a-
district.
Well,
It's got to be a benefit
let's
district.
be clear. We're putting minimum infrastructure, which will serve the future total sewering of Shenorock and Lincolndale, up to $10 million. I mean, and what this will do is put us in position to apply for EF, the Environmental Facilities Corporation grant process.
Yeah, but a lot of the EFC money is matching funds. So to
We're
think
going to have $10 million to match.
no, I don't think you can use that money as your match.
Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
Peach
clarify
Lake wasn't
that.
able to do that.
No,
There had to be a local component.
What about
Well, no,
time and
look,
materials?
That's well, now we're getting into the weeds.
Yeah, all right.
Look, even if it costs the town $140,000 to get this accomplished
Moving.
without being reimbursed, I think it's a prudent way to go. But I mean, that's a good point. What do we have to do?
But the district has to be responsible for it ultimately. It's not a proper town charge, because you're only benefiting certain people in the town.
Gotcha.
So if you don't live in that benefited area, you shouldn't be paying for it.
Right.
You
So
can
at some
adva-
point we'll have to
You
work
can
it in.
advance the money,
That's
which is fine.
what I was going to say.
But to recoup it, there's a
Well, that's
there's a
That's
procedure
what
you
I-
have to
that's
follow.
what I suggested.
And the
You
bond
said-
council will give you that procedure. There's at least an authorizing
So
resolution.
we could spend the money to
that
get
you
the
have to
process
adopt
started,
now.
and then when we get the districts formed, then that's when we could basically get that reimbursed, but there's a process that you have to put in play before that.
What he's
Exactly.
saying is gotta get to the bond council. You have to do the bond, you gotta get
Yeah,
to
Doug Goodfriend.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're gonna go, you're gonna see him next
If
week.
there's a process we have to get done what we want to get done, then let's start going down that process.
Okay. Okay, I will have that conversation with Doug. And at this point, I'll make a motion to authorize the supervisor.
Let me just ask a question first so I
Yeah.
understand.
Yep.
So the purpose of this is to begin the work, or at least to prepare a report, a plan, a map for Lincolndale and Shenorock. The future of this town is improved if those areas, those lake areas, are sewered. I think that would be hard for anyone to argue that it's better for the future, it's better for property values, it's better for water quality, it's the best thing to do. Obviously, affording it is always the key. This would provide us with a framework for doing that. Would that be the full build out of those two areas, or only a portion of Lincolndale and Shenorock would be mapped and planned?
That's a good question, and my understanding, town board is that can be the total. This would be plan, map, and review for the total build out.
For the total build out.
And what we can accomplish with our $10 million from the county and other grant resources will, over the years, we'll be able to add, homes. Initially, we were planning 100 plus in Shenorock and probably 60 in Lincolndale. You need flow. That'll be the beginnings of the sewer districts.
And all of those homes would first go to Heritage Hills. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Under this. So, but then the plan would include other homes, which hopefully would then go to Peekskill in the future.
I don't know about that. You have to go like,
Well, that's what I'm
That's
wondering. That's what I'm trying to understand.
yeah, well,
I don't know.
And I don't know that we have to make that determination
Yeah.
now, do we?
no, but I'm thinking we
I just want to understand what, I'm not quite sure what, I read the memo and I don't
Well,
quite get it all.
And, this gets into the sewer district with the initial Shenorock sewer district that goes to Heritage.
Yeah.
If at a later date we get into the Peekskill district, can that be redistricted?
Is that
No, if
I
we
think
form
what
a
you would
sewer
do
district,
would
would
be
it
you-
matter to them
you-
where the water
I
goes?
think the way you'd probably do it would be, you would form the district only around the properties to be served now,
Right.
and then extend it with a separate map. I don't know why he would do the map plan and report for areas that weren't gonna be served presently.
I don't think he is.
But I thought he was proposing a complete plan, a
Well,
rollout.
let me put it this
Over,
way.
this is a,
No, he says here in
If
the
you go to-
memo from before, it says we were at 98,000 for Lincolndale NPR, recognizing that we had not looked at sewer layout options for the area beyond the properties immediately around the lake. So it looks like he's mapping out the homes that we're talking about considering doing now.
Right.
So that would be the district that we would create, whatever he said, 100 homes at Shenorock and
Right.
the homes in Lincolndale. Create those districts, in this case, put them all through Heritage Hills, and then come back at a later date as we continue to push the county. If we get Peekskill, then we could create another district foreseeably going into the Peekskill district.
Either that or extend
Extend the current
the
one.
ones you've
Right.
formed.
so, yeah, so he had two phases here. Project one, he had the extension as project two here. So,
I'll go with you, Kevin.
Yeah, so, we kind of, shifted up, made another option.
right.
But,
And Joe says in here that is he implying here that all of that can be taken by the Heritage Hills District? All of this in the mapped area can be taken by the Heritage Hills District?
Wait, there's 350,000 gallons per
Right.
day remaining.
Right?
and it's 140,000 gallons per day
For,
maximum for both.
Right.
but I think though.
So then wouldn't that weaken the argument to extend wouldn't that make it harder for us then to get into the county district or the county sewage plant? Wouldn't that weaken it though?
Yeah, because they're saying we can get everything into the.
Well,
into
that's
the-
what I'm saying. They go,
No, but you can't.
you already got
You may not.
infrastructure put in. We have to have pipes across the town to do that.
But you
Then
know,
why were you going
with-
to put more pipes?
because
Because of
with,
option
with
3 in
Purdy's,
here, which is
with
can't make
Purdy's,
Purdy's in.
I don't think you can get all 3 of them
No.
on the Heritage Hills.
Especially when we're adding other things to it in the meantime.
Well, that's
as
what
well.
I'm wondering
So
about.
that's
Are
why,
we,
yeah. So
is this gonna? Is this all going to be a mishmash of stuff, or is it
Well,
all
that's
going
why-
to fit
that's
together?
There's a plan, map, and a report.
I think the first objective is
So
to
the
secure
purpose
the
of-
10 million. He's developing a plan that has maybe a lever in it. You can go A or B.
Well, it's based on the premise that the Board of Legislators won't be able to approve this, and other people will start snapping at that money.
Which they are.
Is this actually a design of the system for that money, or just, I mean, a map, plan, and report in the
Which job?
is it's a legal
I thought it was gonna
document
be
that
a-
allows you enough information in order to get a petition from the residents and get a district formed.
If we
It's
gotta come
usually
back
not-
and vote on this, whatever, you need to speak to him.
A
In and of
design.
itself, that expensive a document. So is that include the design element, that he's actually designing the system?
I think what we need to do is either have, I
I got
mean, I'm open to a special meeting to have Joe here,
I would like
because
to.
he needs to answer the questions that we're asking, because we're all sort of reading his memo differently. I by the memo, I thought he was gonna be here, because it says,
Yeah,
I'll
that's
see you
what I
tonight. So that would be my suggestion. I don't know if we need to put it off until next month, but if we can. how many do you need?
I would agree with you. I would like to get more answers.
So, I mean, and maybe we could
Well,
even get
yeah,
a special meeting if we need to, if there's some expediency
Well,
to
let's
this.
let's talk about your questions then, because you know, Joe and I talked about this extensively. I'm going concurrent with the preparation of the map plan and review. We're concurrent with system preparation of environmental assessment forms. Yet, to me, Roland, his proposal on Lincolndale, the $98,000 commitment, you know, is sanitary sewer detail design.
Okay, so that includes the design.
Right here.
Is the design the same as the
Well,
blueprint?
look at this.
Yeah, from the design, if it's a true design,
Yeah.
you should be able to go right to
Well,
bid
he's looking at the level
documents
of detail.
once the
The
district
anticipatory-
begins.
Alter this.
Proposed
To
fee
give
for
him the
this.
option. See, this
No,
is what it
the
says.
task 1-2 would be the sanitary sewer
You know, and he said,
detail
well,
design, so it is
that's 3
It's not
years
in-
away. I can't get.
does not
I
include
can't
that.
secure the 10
It doesn't
million.
include what?
the actual design of the system.
Okay.
But you don't have to do that until after you get approval to,
The
Well, we need- we
map plan and report is the document which allows you to form a district. Its purpose is to give enough information to your residents so that they can either petition you to do it, or if you do it on your own motion, they can bring on a referendum to defeat what it is you proposed. But the purpose of that document is to give them and you enough information to make a decision. So it's got to have in it, for instance, their first year operation and maintenance costs. What's it going to cost them that first year that they have sewer?
That's why it cost $100.
Both capital cost and O&M. All that information goes in this document. But if it's not a design document,
No.
that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
I'm not sure we're all on the same page.
So you're thinking,
I can't. I gotta have more information.
I mean, we did this for Lake Shenorock. We did a map plan and report.
We did.
When we actually got a petition in, went to public hearing and found people weren't in favor of it. I would suggest that maybe go back and look at what you paid for that one.
it was $100,000.
This isn't
Map
much more.
plan and report,
We did it.
Well, we're concurrent. It was produced in 2014, yeah.
Was that for the park district or that was for sewer district?
No, that was for sewer.
Was sewer.
Yeah, this is where we're gonna, there were a number of options,
he should have been here. I thought he was gonna be here, but whatever.
but, no, so here's the thought process. By allowing Woodward and Curran to hold together plan map and review for Lincolndale, and what needs to be done to update and get the plan to get the sewage from Shenorock over into Lincolndale, so it could go into Heritage Hills, would be that extra, $40,000. That would put us in a position, and you heard one of the legislators tonight say, oh yeah, we had a concern about Shenorock going to the Peekskill plant. I mean, I think this would be a shot in the arm for getting Somers allocation of $10 million. I mean, if we don't get approval from the Board of Legislators to move forward with our projects, then
It goes away.
then everything we could do. But not
Till
to,
the next round.
yeah, but
It's long.
it may not be next round.
But,
It may not be another round.
but here's the thing, the issue with
North Salem has a petition in, they want
Right.
sewer Croton Falls. They've already used their $10 million resolution, set aside, but they have another request in. I mean, and we actually passed a third resolution at that Northern Westchester Watershed Committee, somewhere upwards of $171 million for Northern Westchester projects that would actually protect the watershed up here.
But then this goes back to Roland. How do we execute this and make this payment? Well, you're saying that we can't, because we can't get reimbursed, and
I'm
we
saying
can't.
there's a resolution that bond counsel has to prepare that allows you the option of getting your reimbursement at a later date. And if you don't adopt that resolution before you authorize the map plan and reports to be prepared, then you can't get that money back.
Can you do it concurrently?
Yeah.
Same meeting. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
You
but
just
you
decide
have,
what you want
no,
first.
the one resolution has to precede the authorizing resolution.
So you're saying that if we were to accept this tonight, without having that, then we foreseeably could not get the money reimbursed.
Good point.
That's an interesting
Well,
one.
Well, since
That's a game changer.
There you go.
I thought we needed more
we said that
information
20 minutes
anyway,
ago,
so.
but none of us heard that.
So
So.
me-
I heard it.
Because
Went right
remember,
back
that
to-
if this district gets formed and there is even minimal local funding, it has to go to the state controller for approval, the
Okay.
district formations. And when it goes to the state controller,
But it
it's
only-
exactly what they will look at.
Right, it only has to go to the state controller if the pass along is 1,000 or more.
Oh, no, it still has to go. It's just that it's a simplified process. If you fall within their
It's
guidelines,
amazing.
it's a guaranteed approval, but you still have to go through the process.
But long story short, right now with what we're looking at, we need to talk to bond counsel and then come back, have the
And have a conversation.
have a conversation with them, and then we can
But
vote
also,
on one and then vote on the other.
but
And I
you
have
want
Joe
more
Barbagallo
You
here.
want more clarification
Yeah.
from Joe, right?
Yeah, I got questions. I don't think we have all the answers.
So
I just want to know what we're going to do.
Thanks, Roland. Let's move on.
Okay, so we'll table that till next meeting or a special meeting, depending.
Yeah.
Bond counsel, would you be involved in any of that, or?
I could be involved in the conference call if you wish.
We wish.
Okay.
Make sure we're on the right path here.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Procedurally, because that's something we didn't understand.
All right.
Okay, personnel.
We have
Who's on our
openings.
board.
All right,
There you
so
go.
we don't have to read
Authorize
them
the
all.
hiring of Barbara Brandt as provisional assessment clerk at an annual salary of $45,000 per memo dated February 4th from myself, effective January 14th.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So
Since
moved.
she has worked for us before,
She has.
do any of the things she had from the past carry over? Anything that she had accrued in terms of time, or it just starts as a brand new employee?
Give our HR director a call in the morning. She'll provide you with that answer.
Okay.
I know her.
Roland, do you know that one?
her time.
I'm just kidding.
How long ago was it? I think you can carry it.
She had
for
left
7
here.
years.
She left here, gone somewhere else, and then come back
Yeah, just a
a
couple
year
years
ago.
Yeah, like a year or two.
Oh, I think her pension,
Yeah, I think
No,
all
they're
that.
talking about accrued benefits in
She
town.
pick up where she left
Vacations,
yeah, I
sick
think she
time.
does.
Picks up where she left
off.
off.
No expiration.
Yeah, I think if you leave for 3 years, maybe.
There's a time period, but it's longer than 2 years.
Okay, well, okay, so we should check that.
Yeah.
Okay, I know that was a concern.
We pass that though.
All right.
All right, consensus agenda. Any questions on that?
Looks good.
See, someone wants to get out of here.
Valentine's Day.
Oh, that's right.
My home.
We have to rethink this meeting in the future.
Yeah.
I thought we were going to be done a lot
6
earlier.
years.
Yeah, well,
Forgot how these
I think we
state and
learned
county
an
people can be so loquacious.
we learned. Yeah, we learned a very important lesson tonight. Politicians like to speak.
Don't come on the holiday, please.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adopt the consensus agenda
Second.
1 through 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So moved.
We'll give them that.
Our next town board meeting will be March 7th,
And we only have one meeting in March.
Oh, that's right.
right? Because we are hosting the Westchester Municipal Officials.
And where will that be?
That'll be at the Somers Point Grill.
Oh, the new one, right?
Yes. We will have at our work session, we'll have and regular meeting. We're gonna have a public hearing on the proposed local law to prohibit marijuana sales. Town of Somers.
But you won't act to adopt it,
Correct.
because we've got to
Based
wait
on your
and see
guidance.
what they do at the county level, at the state level, and once the state legalizes it, if nobody's helped us, then you'll adopt it.
We'll be loaded and ready to go.
And we're still on the, you're gonna make sure we're in concert with the other municipalities, basically. Are they doing it townwide?
Yes, well, North Castle and North Salem are at least taking the same law and having public hearings on
Okay.
Why do we have to wait to pass the law?
Are you gonna send something out?
it. Because
on the
I'm
second
fearful that
meeting?
if you
Second,
adopt
Westchester
a
County.
local law prohibiting something that's
So,
not yet legal, that
Yeah.
someone will
On the
challenge.
14th?
Yeah,
Yeah.
14, yeah.
Say that again.
If you adopt a local law
Yeah.
prohibiting something
Yeah,
that's not
Yeah,
yet
sure.
legal,
yeah.
I think
Can't prohibit
someone
something
can,
that's already prohibited.
something will, someone may challenge that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think if you wait until the state legalizes it and then adopt your prohibition,
Okay.
you're on the safer ground.
Understand.
But even
But that's someone's going to challenge that.
yeah, but the hook is, and we're doing it under municipal home rule law, and the hook is, well, the state already is giving opt-outs, just not to towns. So why shouldn't we be able to opt out under municipal home rule?
I understand the argument against opt-outs. I really do. Otherwise, if you had laws involving rights of people with disabilities, could you opt out of that? And that creates a chaos in the law. I just don't favor this particular law.
Yeah.
Uh,
I agree, but since the county's opening the door.
But since they've
I mean,
opened the
state's
door,
opening the door.
which may or may not be a good idea by the state, but if they've done that, well, if they open the door,
I would think
Maybe
that
we'll
maybe
try to
we
knock
would
on it.
find it adopted in the cities and not in the rural areas.
I think the cities
I'm
would
not
not
absolute,
opt
but I'm saying
that'd be
maybe
my
that's
guess.
the worry.
I have an announcement. I just want to let the board know that earlier this month, Councilman Sirico and myself attended a first responder luncheon that was hosted by Paramount, at which time we gave proclamations to the fire department, EMS, and our police. We thought it was a very nice gesture of Paramount to do that, and we were happy to be there. Two announcements here. There's civilian training, response to active shooter events. It's scheduled for Wednesday, March 6th, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Westchester County Center, and that's open to all residents of the county. And a very popular event is coming up Friday, March 29th, which is the Westchester County Mobile Shredder is coming to Somers, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. and that will be at Reese Park. So if you have documents you need shredded, we'll see you on that date and time. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at this point.
Motion to adjourn.
Soon. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So moved. And good night, Somers.
Good night.